To bring you some breaking news, and the International Criminal Court has issued arrest warrants for Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and former Defense Minister Yoav Gallant for alleged war crimes in the Gaza Strip. It's also issued warrants for Hamas leader Mohammed Deif al-Masri. Let's bring in Step Vassen, who's on the phone from The Hague, where those arrest warrants were issued. Talk to us about what the rejects for these warrants say, Steph.
Yes, the court has just issued these arrest warrants, 3 arrest warrants, one for Hamas leader known as Deif, and 2 for the Israeli leaders Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister, and Defense Minister Yoav Gallant. The arrest warrants are for crimes against humanity and war crimes committed from at least October 8, 2023, until the request for the arrest warrants was issued by the prosecutor 6 months ago on May the 20th. There have been some really serious delays for issuing these arrest warrants. There was a lot of questions about if the ICC was capable of doing so, despite a lot of rejections by the parties that are involved in the ICC, especially also from Europe, from Germany, but also Israel has very much tried to avoid this by filing all kinds of complaints. But the ICC has now decided to reject these complaints, and they have said that these arrest warrants should now be issued.
And indeed, there had been also a great deal of pressure step on the ICC not to issue these warrants, particularly on the Israeli government, the Israeli leadership. Why has the court chosen to do so now?
Well, the question, the case is that now there is a new presiding judge of the pre-trial chamber that was issuing these arrest warrants. The previous presiding judge has informed the court that she was sick, that there was a medical issue. So she recently stepped down after months of basically investigating the case, and suddenly she disappeared from the case. And then a new presiding judge, a French judge, is now holding this case. And very quickly after the previous judge stepped down, this decision has now been taken. So this also gives us some answers on these delays. We're basically also buying time because now with the new judge, apparently there was no more hesitation, and he took this decision together with 2 other judges.
Remind our viewers, Step, of what the Israeli government and his former defense minister, as well as the Hamas leader, who's also been issued an arrest warrant with, what exactly are they being accused of?
Yeah, these are the crimes against humanity and war crimes. And what the prosecutor really laid out last May was that starving the population of Gaza was a very important point for him to ask for these arrest warrants, but also the fact that there have been murders, attacks, of course, from the Israeli army. But one of the things that really stood out was the fact that the Israeli authorities and the Israeli army have been starving the population of Gaza, and that's something that's a very specific war crime that also has already some experience at the ICC in previous cases. So I think the prosecutor hopes that there will be a lot of evidence that he can use to prove this case.
Okay. Steph, we know that Israel doesn't accept the jurisdiction of the ICC, doesn't recognize the jurisdiction of the ICC. So what will this mean for this case against the Israeli leadership, Netanyahu and former Defense Minister Gallant?
This will mean that every country that is part of the ICC, and from the top of my head, these are now 40 countries, they have the obligation to arrest Netanyahu, Gallant, and Deif when they come across these individuals. So this will mean in practice that it's going to be very difficult for Netanyahu to travel and Gallant as well to travel abroad, because the countries that are members of the ICC, for example, Germany, the UK, a lot of European countries as well, but also countries across the globe, have the obligation to arrest them and hand them over to The Hague, to the court.
Okay, Steph, for the moment, thank you very much. If you're just joining us on Al Jazeera, breaking news this hour, and the International Criminal Court in The Hague has issued arrest warrants for the Prime Minister of Israel as well as the former Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, and also issued an arrest warrant for Hamas leader Diab al-Masri. Let's get Hamda Salhout on the phone now. She's in Amman, Jordan, because Israel's government has banned Al Jazeera from reporting in Israel and the occupied West Bank. It's very early, of course, Hamda, but I'm wondering if there's any reaction from Israel to this news from the ICC.
Well, there's no reaction just yet from the Israelis, but throughout the last several months, when all of this was being floated, when there were all of the processes within the ICC that recommended the arrest warrants, Israel did what it does best. It tried to discredit the ICC. It tried to challenge its jurisdiction, and it tried to say that it has the right to self-defense. And Israeli politicians internally within the Israeli government were doing everything they could to fight it. They were trying to get the Attorney General involved. The Attorney General was doing a lot to try and come up with sort of committees to alleviate some of what was going to happen, but ultimately that was not the case. So the Israelis now have to deal with this. But Benjamin Netanyahu, as well as the United States, have said that they would do everything in their power to fight this. But the reality on the ground in Gaza is why this has happened. You're looking at a war that is 410 days long, where more than 43,000 Palestinians have lost their lives, where a huge portion of the population is starving, where more than 2 million people have been displaced as a result of Israeli aggression. And Benjamin Netanyahu, along with his former defense minister, are the people who are responsible for that destruction, for that devastation. And according to all of these international courts and now the ICC, they say that Benjamin Netanyahu and Yoav Gallant need to be held responsible for that.
Right. And the ICC in its statement, Hamda, says there's reasonable grounds to believe that Netanyahu and Gallant oversaw attacks on civilian populations in Gaza. As we were just talking about with Step, the timing of this announcement of these arrest warrants is quite significant at a time when the war, of course, continues, but also at a time when Israel has been trying to reach a ceasefire, perhaps with Hezbollah in Lebanon. It took a while for these arrest warrants to come through. There was significant pressure, of course. On the timing, what impact do you see this having on Israel's conduct in the Gaza Strip right now?
Well, Israel's conduct throughout Gaza hasn't really shifted throughout the last 13 months. They say that they would do whatever they can in order to defeat Hamas. And if that means killing civilians in the process, they say that that is an unfortunate result of collateral damage. They say that they do what they can to mitigate civilian harm, but the numbers do not lie here. We're talking about 43,000 people who've been killed, more than 100,000 others who've been injured. And the policy that Israel's military has had, according to sources, according to Israeli soldiers who have spoken anonymously after fighting in Gaza, they say that they essentially had free reign. There were a lot of errors that were also taken on part of the Israeli military. Let's not forget all of the humanitarian aid workers who were killed because the army said it was a misidentifications of schools and other civilians as well, the use of Palestinians in Gaza as human shields. So there are a lot of crimes that add up here, but ultimately the timing of this when it comes to a ceasefire is not really significant when it comes to Gaza. On the front of Hezbollah, you have the U.S. envoy who is in Israel today going to meet with the Israeli prime minister within the next couple of hours to try and figure out a solution to fighting in the north. When it comes to the cessation of aggression within Gaza, those talks have been stalled for months, and mediators have said that neither side is serious about coming to an agreement. And you also had the de facto head of Hamas say that no captives would be released until there was an end to the war. So you still have Israel and Hamas on completely different pages when it comes to any sort of ceasefire deal. But the crimes that have been committed over the last 13 months in Gaza still continue to this day.
Okay, Hamda, thank you very much for the moment. Hamda Salhout on the phone there from Amman, Jordan, with the latest there on this breaking news story we've been reporting on Al Jazeera.